Thanks for joining us on another episode of Lincoln to Local. This week, we caught up with Steve Thompson after a busy few weeks at the state capitol, including a big vote on a poultry bill that Farm Bureau members took action on and a few other bills that we're tracking as we approach the first committee deadline. All right, Steve, it's been anything but a quiet start to session the last couple of weeks, and I know we've had a lot going on this week, especially with a big vote on a poultry bill that came through the House. So you want to start off and just tell us a little bit about that?
That's right. This is our first action alert as Oklahoma Farm Bureau this year to get everybody to help us get one across the line and across the House floor. It's a bill we've been working with several industry partners on and the Department of Agriculture that we feel like is a common sense clarification of the law that if you are a poultry grower involved in one of the integrators or involved in specifically handling the poultry litter, that if you're following your NRCS written and the State Department of Ag approved nutrient management plan, that you cannot be held liable for any pollution that occurs outside of your control. We've unfortunately seen some lawsuits over the course of the last couple of decades for growers who were following the law, and they got roped into a very costly legal battle. And so we're trying to state up front that if they're following all the rules and laws that the state puts before them, then they shouldn't be held liable because there are so many other environmental factors that impact the water quality all over the state that our growers, who we think try to do the best management practices possible. And while it still leaves the door open, if we have someone who is not doing it the proper way, they're still just as liable for any wrongdoing as they were before. So it's really a common sense protection, but there was some pushback from some special interest groups, and so it was a little bit noisy and had a protracted floor debate. And we had heard some allegations of folks who had problems with that and were bringing up things that we thought were really not factual as concerns with that. But it's a big building with a lot of people and a lot of voices, and everyone's entitled to their opinion. So we reached out through the communications team and the field staff to try to fire up some of our members to speak up on behalf of agriculture, and locked arms with some of the other ag groups. And thankfully, because of some of that support, I think really outweighed the opposition, and it passed Monday afternoon, 68 yes votes to 28 no votes, and really wasn't in danger as it turned out to be because of the tremendous support we got from our members. And so, as you know, we don't call them to action unless it's really important. And this was one of those times that it was time to step up for agriculture. And I was really proud of the way they responded. And we appreciate all their help. And now that bill heads across the rotunda to begin the process over on the Senate side. So we'll have a couple weeks before they're back into committees. So it sits in the background for now. But we're excited to have that conversation with the Senate members in a few weeks.
Yeah, that's great. It was great to see that pass. I know it was a burden off of your guys' shoulders for sure. Another thing that we've seen come through are some water bills in different formats. I know we have some permitting, some metering bills. Can you kind of talk us through those?
Yeah, that's other than kind of a detour to really prioritize the poultry bill. Water has been the dominant topic. Here we are in the third week of session now that it has taken over most of the conversations for our friends and some of the folks that we work with. We started with 5 or 6 predominant water bills. The ones that mostly we talked about came from Western Oklahoma, from Senator Brent Howard and from Representative Carl Newton. And those have really kind of come into focus, and we've reduced that number down. I think there's really 2 main bills, and I don't believe that they may end up being each other's author in the opposite chamber. So the working group is sort of emerging there. You still have Senator Howard and a bill geared towards a specific basin in southwest Oklahoma, and that language was really troubling at first, but he's shown a willingness to open that up and work with us on that. So I had some great conversations with him and have more of those scheduled. And I think one of the common denominators to those bills has to do with the concept of water metering and measurement and reporting to the Water Resources Board about how much an irrigator may be using or some other permitted water well user. And some of the key things in law with groundwater permits are getting a hard look at them. The more or less voluntary system we have today, is that really keeping up with things, or what type of issues do we want to have mandated on a water well user? And I think our folks on the ground have shown an openness because they don't feel like they're doing anything wrong. Some of the early proposals could have threatened their access, their legal property right to that, and so nobody wants to see that threatened. So I feel like that our members have been very open to maybe evolving the law forward when it comes to metering and measuring, and so those two bills are what are really the predominant focus right now, and we're excited about those conversations. I don't expect a quick resolution to that one way or the other, but I think you put all the key stakeholders in a room and maybe for several different meetings, this is not going to come together fast, but we're still optimistic that that the people involved in this want the best thing for the whole state. There's a lot of regional differences there, and even within a certain region, there's some factions emerging there, but I think we all want the same thing at the end of the day, and so we're optimistic, but expect a lot more discussions about water over the coming weeks.
For sure. Honestly, it sounds kind of like some of the same things with the poultry bill, where it's going to protect the people that are doing the right thing, and if there's someone that's not doing the right thing, this will maybe make up for that. So sounds like our members are open to it, which is great. We'll see where that heads, I suppose. Another thing that we've seen the past couple weeks and maybe in the weeks ahead are some things to do with a bill from last year about farm kids getting driver's license. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that was a bill that we worked on the last two sessions, finally passed it last year. Again, coming from Northwest Oklahoma, and Representative Carl Newton had really spearheaded that, and it had stalled out 2 years ago in the Senate, but then this past year it was able to work its way through the process. And one of the truly unintended consequences that we talk about a lot of times when we have one good idea, until you put it into play in action, you really don't know all the angles to that. And that went into effect this past November 1st, and it was just a few days into it being the new rules to where kids who either live on a farm or work on a farm could obtain at age 14 a more a restricted driver's license to officially be able to operate on the roads. We know for years that's probably gone on in farm and ranch households, but it wasn't technically legal. This is a way to address that, and one of the aspects of it was, okay, if you license these kids, get them some driver training, perhaps we can improve safety. Even though we might have more teenagers on the road, it might actually be in a safer manner. Well, one of the things we didn't realize is state law prohibited driving schools, whether through the public schools or private companies. They could not put a kid in their vehicle below a certain age for the road training, which is one of the key components. They could still do the classroom driver training, but they couldn't put them on the road. And so there's a cleanup bill out there this year that is moving quite well so far that would move that training legal age down to 13 and a half. So whenever your kids turn 14, they might be trained up and ready to go to obtain that license so that they could help, whether it's going to and from school or other approved events, or just actually out on the farm and ranch in times that they need to get on the highway.
That's great to hear. Is that something that has been moving or kind of on the docket yet?
It's passed out of its initial committee
Okay.
in the House, and it has not yet been heard on the House floor, but there's still several weeks window for that to work. And so we're optimistic because there was really calls and support from all around the state for that, and the same person who's been in charge of that is voicing that. So I think he's got a lot of credibility on the issue. So it still has a long ways to go, but we're very cautiously optimistic that that's going to work out for the best.
Yeah, sounds like a good plan. So I know that we had some news in the Senate this week of a new leader elected. Do you want to give our members just kind of an update on that?
Yeah, that's we've had the same leadership in both the House and Senate for quite some time, but we're nearing the end of the term limits for both of those chambers. And in the Senate, they held their leadership elections this past Monday, and Senator Greg McCourtney from Ada has been elected as the pro tem designate. And so that won't take effect till after the election, after the end of this year, but would be in place. He would be the leader of the Senate starting in 2025. And he's someone that we haven't worked with a lot, but what we have worked with has been good. And honestly, we're very optimistic about getting to build that relationship with him. And he comes from a different part of the state than Senator Treat. We had a great relationship with him, and he was more of an urban guy, but actually was really good to work with. And Senator McCourtney is from Ada, and while Ada is kind of a big city in its region, it's probably not the biggest as compared to Edmond, Oklahoma City, some of the others. So we know that he'll be familiar with a lot of the issues we face, and we're excited to get to know and to work with him.
Yeah, that's super exciting. So on top of all of the legislative action that's been going on at the Capitol, today, Tuesday, was FFA Day at the Capitol. Tell us what you saw there.
That was really an exciting day. There were so many blue and gold jackets around every floor of the Capitol. It's always a time that the people at the Capitol look forward to because we get so many groups out there. And you talk to folks who work in the building, and while it is the people's building and everyone's allowed in there are different levels of acceptance of who comes into the building and whether they're really happy to have them there. But I think everybody from the bottom staff member to the governor really loves it when the building's full of FFA kids and advisors. And they had to have had a record-breaking crowd this year because you just couldn't hardly walk on any floor without running into kids and a lot of old friends that are ag teachers. And so I think it was really a good showing for agriculture in rural Oklahoma and a program that we value so much. And hopefully they got in a little amateur lobbying for funding for career tech and some of those ag ed programs that we hold dear.
For sure, yeah. It's always good to see all the blue and gold there, and I know lots of legislators put their FFA jackets outside their offices and just love welcoming those kids, and maybe some of them will come to Capitol Camp this summer. Guess we'll see. So next week is kind of the first big committee deadline. Will you kind of talk us through that?
Yeah, we run on cycles and times at the Capitol pretty strictly, and next week will be the last week for items to come out of their committee in the House of Origin. We started with several thousand bills, and there'll be around 1,000 of them survive that. And just getting to narrow the playing field helps folks identify what are serious issues and what are things that might have just got filed with no intention of pursuing them. And with that comes some of the more difficult, challenging issues that are more contentious. That seems to be always the most tense week because it's really a do or die time. And a lot of times the legislator will bring forward an idea that is far from refined and far from finished. And while that's okay, it seems like this deadline week, those are the ones that are very divisive. And so it seems like that's the temperature in the building goes up either officially or unofficially during that week. It's very warm outside today, but it'll be very warm inside the building as far as everybody's concerned next week. So we're cautiously optimistic that most of the things that we were the most concerned about will have been taken care of, but you just never know. It seems like some things tend to pop up on deadline week, so we'll have to stay vigilant with that. And we appreciate the field staff for coming to the Capitol with us as they do most of the spring, and they'll help us divide and conquer and cover as many of those meetings as possible to make sure that everything gets the attention that it deserves.
For sure. Well, I know your team will stay on top of it. Thank you so much, Steve.